Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs with Dr. Contrast. Boy, good to be back on board here today. And I just thought I'd take a moment here before I begin, just a bit of a review here. We've gone through this process about 2 or 3 sessions ago, but I felt it was really interesting to go back into it and to show you what terrific progress has been made over the last 2 weeks. But also, before I begin, too, I want to make sure that I'm going to dedicate this program today to Doug Ritterling. Who is, without a question, one of the finest friends I've ever had to deal with and to work with in the design business. Doug is an excellent designer, spent his career, majority of his career with TTI Associates in South Carolina, and did everything from product design work to consultation work, and just a genuine great talent, and this is his dream, and I want to make sure that we give this man the respect that he's due. He was kind enough to ask me about a month or two ago to maybe join forces. He had this dream about doing these slot cars. He's always had that passion for it, but he was very kind to give me a call about a month ago and said, "Hey Jim, I got this idea about doing slot cars, and I've always wanted to be a car designer. And do you think I can do this?" I said, "Absolutely, you can do that." And if I can be of any help, Doug, I'd be more than happy to jump in and give you all the support you need. So to make a long story short, it all came together, and we had a conversation about maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago, sometime in that time frame, about what direction he wanted to take. And at that point, it was interesting that he was doing some IndyCar work, and I'm going to say this very, very respectfully. The work that he was doing, he had some great work done on IndyCars at 124 scale, slot car work. But from my point of view, being in the automobile industry, we're trying to get about 15, 20 years out and much more adventuresome with some of the shapes we were working with. So I said, "Hey, Doug, why don't we do a really nasty stealth system, like a 117 Nighthawk on 4 wheels? Make it very stealth, very crisp and angular." Everybody else out there was doing the very soft, doughy IndyCar work, but nothing out there had that same kind of, had anything to do with a semblance or a personality or conviction of really being very evil-looking, guttural, and extremely faceted. And again, I can't think of anything more than just the stealth systems that are out there now in aircraft design. Let's bring that into 4 wheels. So he agreed with that, and so I just wanted to take a moment here to tell you how much I appreciate working with Doug, and what he's done with this thing is absolutely incredible. We'll show you through the process today. We'll go through this update, how we've gone from sketch into chassis development, which Doug has engineered, and then into body forming and getting the 3D printed pieces, and we're ready to fly. So at the end of the broadcast today, I'll make sure we give you the website to check it out, and hopefully we're going to start going national with this thing, international with it, in about another week or 2 or so. But congratulations, Doug. You've done an outstanding job, and I'm happy to be a part of the team. So let's begin. I'm going to go back to square one and give you a real quick overview and bring up to speed of where we are over the last few weeks or days. So we started this about, after we had that conversation about being stealth related and very, very crisp and angular, I started doing a series of thumbnail sketches here, just a real series of quick thumb soldier studies and elevation, getting that crispness down, low profile, very thin body, but extremely sheer, and looking at those forms, and these 4 variations. Then going into the plan view set, we wanted to, I felt, for example, in the very beginning, we should do this dart-like approach, where you've got this very thin nose cone area coming into a body form. This is all sheared on an angle from the center line of the vehicle on down, and the side paws are kind of cantilevered off of that, and then into this very simple tail or swallowtail tail section into it, then with the 2 canards coming off the back. And the same thing up front with the front dihedral wing. So that's where we started, just really quick little pencil sketches. And I'm going to go through this very quickly here. So that was phase 1. Then we came back with it and said, "Oh, let's go back a little bit more and get some more of this, maybe a little bit of roundness and a little more shape into the form itself." It still maintained that very hard-edged stealth look that we had initially planned upon, and with a lot of high tail canards and so forth, and getting away from that long horizontal wing that's on an IndyCar, Formula 1 cars now, but much more integrated in the shape, much more aircraft-like. So we started with that, another series of 4 little elevation studies, and things started to come together with some of the shapes we're looking at here, like intake systems, getting very low profile, angular on the body side to kind of drop the frontal graphics and the overall cross section for aerodynamic purposes. Even on a slot track, you're going to need that. Then the last one we did, so it was more of a variation when the theme still had that very dark looking, almost 117 look to it in the plan view. But again, we added some, again, bigger dihedrals, and it came off the back end with a more severe swallow's tail with the two canards coming off of that platform. You'll see that as we go into the development down the line here. So that's where we started with those two thumbnail sketches. Then we went from that into these guys, where we said, okay, let's give this guy some real scale here. So these are products. This is a great fascination for me to work with. I love this stuff to work with. It's a theme that very people work with. It's a very mysterious approach sometimes, and it's very intimidating sometimes. But it also is extremely revealing and refreshing often, all the time, because you're away from the typical approach of laying down the wheels, putting in the body form, learning up the center line, the same process of developing an automotive or a vehicle design sketch. This is an empathy sketch where you take a piece of Conte grain and just put the strike lines down, which I did, and you lay in the wheels, and you come back in and cut the sections to it. Now notice, now we're really getting adventuresome. Very full forward cockpit, long canard off the back, and the body side panels coming together and maintaining this whole theme about being extremely stealth-like. So let me walk through these guys. So that was the first one we did. There's one. Went to another one, a little perspective study here, and what that might look like in perspective. That was the same variation. A little bit less of the canard, but same thing. But this is all this canard came off the center line in the plan view, so pretty deceptive in its perspective sketch. But that's what that was doing. Well, that was that sketch, the second one. Then we moved back to elevations, where we got a little bit more romantic with it, a little rounder, a little softer with it. And I don't know if that was really, it's a bit on the gargantuan scale, pretty massive overall wheelbase. But for me, a little bit too doughy up in here yet. There's still, you could do that with stealth, but it doesn't look like that same evil, hard-edged, intimidating form that we want to develop with the slot car. So, and this is another empathy sketch where all the dark lines you see here come in the Conte grain. We're just actually sketching our emotional lines. And you're filling in with some neat stuff with section, and I put a little bit of tone to it to find where some of the body forms are. So that was another variation thing we did. And then we came back again to this is another elevation where we just looked at maybe a much broader approach for really putting the canopy full forward. In other words, the pilot or the driver would be back in this area, just all full knee, full contour back with a probably expanded cockpit on this thing. But nonetheless, it had that same overall character to it, being very sheer, not as crisp in the side pods, which I didn't care for, and I think. And again, I'm not being judgmental here, but it just didn't have that same aircraft stealthy look. It looked like more of like a long, very extended SUV of some sort with a little bit more of an angular process to it. So it was just a little bit outside the envelope of what we wanted to do from the point of view of putting the program together. So that was another sketch we did. We're quickly here. Now the last one, getting pretty close to what the character was going to look like in an overall perspective, so I can kind of fit that in a little bit. Again, very sheer looking canopy. Overhead with a lot of body section. Notice it breaks off again, and drops into the body, the side pod, and again with that very long split canard with a high single dihedral at the back. So that's where we actually took that process from square one. So from the pencil sketches, this is where we are in the first pass of studies sent back to Doug for evaluation. So then we went through that process. Then we came back. The last set I did, I thought this started to really add some spark to it. I mean, it really got some interesting gestures here with the tone paper. And even though some of them had a little bit of roundness to it, it still had that same overall, I think, stealth character. Very long wheelbase, extremely exaggerated cockpit area in almost every one of them. Did that cockpit full forward, much more aircraft-like, and very low-profile side pods, which is in each case developed here, other than this one, where the actual form itself formed into the pod itself. A little bit too rounder, but we crisped that off, but it had some potential. But again, these are exploratory sketches, and again, the purpose for today's work is so we can get back up to speed about where we've been, and wait till you see where we ended up. It's just been absolutely exciting. So there's another family of sketches. So once I completed this, these sketches were all sent down to headquarters at the Full Earth Workshop, which I'll give you some information on at the end of the stream for evaluation. And Doug looking at them, we chatted back and forth about how we wanted to really take the next step with it. And there were some neat things happening in something like this. He still wanted to keep that very strong stealth look that we started with some of the pencil sketches, which I fully agreed with. So from this family of sketches, these three body forms or elevations, we kicked in another gear, and now we're going to go back and give you some of the more information about where we have been currently. From those sketches, we went back into some theme studies here. And again, remember, this one was almost like the hinge pin all right, let's pursue this kind of form right here, but kind of modify it or keep tweaking a little bit more, more romantic, far more sheer-like, far more stealth-like. So that was the next pursuit we're after here. So this is where we are, and we came right down the pike with the overall three-quarter sketches from Doug's architecture. Again, notice again, very strong spine through the actual body form into a very facet break, into platform, in the side pod break, and so on, and the twin dihedrals at the very end of it here. So let's go there. That's so sketch one. Variation two was here. Again, same process. A little wider platform here than the side pods themselves, but again, very useful in terms of getting the form down. Again, look at this, very evil looking front elevation. We wanted that thing to be really sneaky looking and extremely, for lack of a better term, intimidating on the track. And very low profile, extreme, with a lot of adhesion and a lot of under tray on it to kind of keep it kind of stabilized. And Doug had done a tremendous job with the mechanics. We'll show you later. In the chassis development. So this is the body form that snapped over the chassis itself, and we'll show you a little bit how that went through. So that was the sketch number two. Again, trying to really work on, again, this very low profile front elevation, but this very broad, wide body look in the body shape itself for the actual Formula One car itself. So now we've got that guy. That was another sketch. Move along here very quickly. That's two. This is the third one we did. Notice how we kept pushing, trying to push the side pods rearward and get much more of a platform at the back of the vehicle, much like the very first sketch, almost dart-like, where we had much more of that overall triangular form with this very long canard coming off of it. And again, this is an interesting front elevation, and we couldn't achieve this even in the 3D printed process, but maybe in future reference, we're going to come back to this as a theme, because we are definitely going to do a family of these forms. And it's going to be IndyCar, Formula One first, and we're going to do maybe some truck series, and then do some really neat vehicle stuff for different, like closed wheel racing, like IMSA material or GT prototype. That's all coming as a result of getting this family started. But we wanted to start with this F1 concept first, because it's just not out there. Everything else is very tired. So notice what we liked about this was this very wing-like front elevation. And again, this is all air draft underneath here. This is all open. This is just like a ring here, a vacuum where the air flies right through that chamber right there. So it's all real minimal body and extremely thin side pod intake work, and then it just exhausts out the back of this thing as it comes through the tail section. You don't see an elevation here. But that was the idea of getting that almost that spring, almost like a hanger type body form. A lot of body, very thin wing structure, upper and lower, and an air vacuum right through the entire form of the body. So that was another sketch we submitted for the stealth program. Then we started to hit some things here that Doug liked, and I thought this was kind of nice. So this is going to get closer to the actual form itself, minus the swallowtail and the twin canard at the back here. And this around to get that up the one spot. There it is. But again, getting the sawtooth intake piece and then dropping off the side pod. Not bad, but we want to go the other direction and kind of keep this thing all uphill, so it's all air slope and fully utilizing aerodynamics as we go down the line here. So this is the final sketch that we did, and in the development process. And from that point on, we worked at Doug worked with some of the sketches I sent down, and from here on in, we're going to go much more of the development side of, okay, now let's get this in a CAD format, some sort of a format, so we can see what the surfaces are doing, and make them work from the point of view of being practical to build and easy to manufacture and get on that snap onto that chassis. So that was the last sketch we did. Let's put these side by side if I can. So from that sketch, we went into something like this. Notice, even though we've got the sawtooth out of it, we modified that bit. So this is where we started with the CAD development. So let me, if I put this here, if I put that there, well, you kind of come together a little bit. Yeah, that's close enough. I think we get an idea of where we are there with this beauty. So sketch into side pod and the overall architecture. And the thing that was unique about this, let me just kind of move this out of the way here. What's unique about the development into the CAD itself, into the architecture, was that triangular form coming into a little nose cone. It was a little bit too flat, a little bit too, from my point of view, anyhow, Doug agreed, very not slim enough, not needle-like enough. So I'll show you some of the development here on the CAD systems itself. So that was the first blush 3/4. Then the rear 3/4, that came into play. Interesting, but yeah, notice again, it was very curvilinear here. And we didn't want to, I felt like very strongly about that. Let's keep this thing nice and sheer and crisp. as we go through the whole process, which you'll see as we develop along the line here, how it all began to really evolve and change and transform to what I think is a very intimidating final form for the first introduction piece that we're going to go worldwide with. So that was another rear view study that we did, and Doug did in CAD. A little bit of an overhead one-point view of showing some of the surface work and the like. Again, starting to get some nice platform up here. And that very large, almost aircraft carrier deck-like on the upper side of the form itself. Then we did that. Then we went to, now this is where it gets interesting. Very interesting. Now notice, look what happened here. Let me take this back here for just a moment. Notice how we're all concerned about this very long triangle, a very large low triangle at the nose piece, because those two side walls were coming down and not tapering properly enough. So I worked back and forth with Doug and said, we need to take this portion, this whole upper piece here, add another chamfer to it, so like a section step to kind of break that form down so we can taper that into that needle like, and I'll show you in a moment what that did. By adding another element in there, getting that fracture line down, in other words, peak, fracture, then in the body side, made a huge difference. Look at the difference in the front end here. The old one had a very large triangle up front. But now we took that same form, added that second line in through here, which is this, that second form, and really brought it into a nice little needle, really interesting needle nose, very sheer looking front end, which I think really solved the problem. And then some of the other variations you'll see very shortly here, and went the other way as well, where we actually took the form here and tapered it in, got a lot thinner up front as well. So little subtle changes along the way made an incredible difference in the overall contrast of the form. So there we are with that guy front, so nice, very like a little inclined front view study of this thing. Now there's the real, look at the jewel here. That's a real dead front elevation. Notice we still have some things to work with here. This area here, and again, take that form where that little break is here, we're going to take that shape and bring it in right like so, right to the needle. So that whole surface right there will kind of step in and get a lot thinner and much more, as far as I'm concerned, much more aerodynamic looking, very almost like a knife edge on the front of the machine. So that was Doug's work, and then we went from that generation into added a few more things to it, a little bit of color to it. Again, it's a very simple one point here, looking at some of the shape. Notice how that all of a sudden now we're getting the pods to really work. I won't bring that sketch back here, but we're getting the side pods to really work now. And some of the weights here were almost equal, 1 to 1 to 1. So we modified those a little bit as we go down the line, which you'll see. But again, starting to come together. Cockpit area, tapering, the twin canards at the back, and starting to make some real sense out of this thing to give it more of an aircraft feel. So we're making great progress with Doug's elevation studies here. So that was a one-point study. A little bit of a 3/4 front on it. Again, notice you can see it here, a lot more dart-like. And again, taking that side pod and just shrinking it down instead of keeping it consistent and going lower here and then bringing it uphill. So you get the slope and this slide off on the actual triangular shape on the side pod. Much more fluid looking. So that was really helpful. Now here's another one, the rear 3/4, really interesting. Notice some of the things we talked about before, that some of the initial studies were very round up here on that upper platform. And working back and forth with Doug on some sketches, which I have not shown here yet, because it was redundant. But again, look at how that whole form now starts to really get much more angular, but keeping the whole theme extremely faceted. Huge difference, and I think nicely done. Notice instead of the swallowtail going inboard, we just kind of broke a plane, that little flat plane, an aircraft carrier flat with a center line down off the cockpit spine. Made a huge difference. Then we added the canards and tucked it in behind the wheels and tied it in the actual lower surface that the Doug, this lower appendage area that Doug already redesigned and had already finished, designing. So that was a rear 3/4 study. Then we went back to the front end. Look at this thing. I mean, it's just getting neater, and then notice how much more of an edge to it. We're still modifying some of this fortune up front here, which will come, I'm sure, later on in another generation of some tuning here, but just look how minimal that thing looks. There's not a lot of body form in here, just a lot of airspace, and this is all platform work up on top here. It all tapers off. All the tapering is happening in here and in here, up on the outer body, all falling away from you. Very intriguing, slippery looking shape. So we're making great progress. So from this point, we decided, let's go back and do some variations on theme and get some sketches on this thing and kind of just tune it a little bit on some of the things we're dealing with. So I went back to just a very quick little pencil sketches here and went back to elevations, trying to work on some of the things we've talked about earlier. I get a little bit on the fat side on this guy, but a little closer, a little bit leaner looking. Some of the fats that's on the upper drop pod and side pod itself. Same thing with this, but we want to stretch that just a little bit more, get more wheelbase to it to give some real substance. So that was all part of the process as well. So that was the first sketch we did, sent that one down. Then we put it in perspective. This is where it started to change. It really helped to slow things down a little bit. Notice we want to add that body shoulder to it, which is done in red here. Still kept the twin canards. And again, notice how we brought the sheerness and then the actual body form right back, and then put a platform or a shelf here to kind of minimize that area, and then dropped into a section break. Notice cockpit to chamfer to body side to pod and side pod. And look how we really tapered that side pod in to kind of minimize it and make it much more fruitful. And I just decided that the second sketch, let's kind of keep it all section study and just indicate where the wheels might be as a go study. But the concentration here was to get some really good section analysis so we can look at how the forms are going to all work together. So that sketch was sent down. Doug, so far so good. Reapproved the overall look of what we're getting. We're getting closer to a production model here, so it's very, very close. Then I sent another family of sketches down. Again, a little more tuned in. And then notice how much more knife edge this thing is getting here. I'm really tapering in that front piece into that knife edge as opposed to that long, flat triangle. Again, much more streamlined with some of the returns on the actual body form into the pod. This we try to maintain that sidewall chain, but if that opens up and becomes a flat chamber in there, that's fine. But the overall character should be much more of this. It's almost like F-35 stealth return with on a F-117 body form, which is this. So again, I wasn't really a big fan of the shorter canards. It didn't look like it was really fluid enough. But I think the longer canard here, where you come actually behind the wheels and tuck it in behind that, like some of the earlier sketches we showed you, so much stronger. So we kept that alive. And then again, the last one, then we went to the rear three-quarter. This is what I was getting at here. Let me bring the sketch back. See how this kind of shortens up a little bit? It's almost in the same three-quarter, just in an elevation that we built right there in the wheel on the elevation. It just didn't look like it was really stretched enough and fluid enough. But look how, when we did this upper piece with a very longer canard on it, it made a lot of sense, especially when we look at it from the rear three-quarter. Look how that tucks in behind the wheel itself and just kind of cradles this whole back platform off of the body shape. This one started to really have some really, what I refer to as a romantic course to it. Really made a distinctive statement. It's getting really very, very close to this whole stealth 117 look we're looking at for this very crisp, angular, intimidating looking form on the track itself. So then we went from that sketch to that into a little montage. Again, here's that taper I was talking about here. The plan form comes into that canard and it just breaks in the needle form, adding a wing here. And again, notice section study telling us where those forms were. And again, another variation on things, getting that real thin needle form up front to kind of function for us and do a nice job. So this was the last family of sketches. These last 5 that I sent down to Doug to work with, when working back and forth with him, were the actual foundation for, all right, now we've got it settled here. We've got a really nice overall character and personality for the shape itself. Let's go back into CAD geometry and see if we can get this thing to really function well. So this is exciting. Now, from this point on, it gets really interesting because what I'll show you next is the actual final 3D printed piece that will go on top of the chassis itself. And there she is. So really interesting how it all came together, adding some little stealth definition. This is a good view to work with here because there's a line here you don't see because it's so subtle. There's an actual break line right there. And I'm going to take a look at this sketch and this view and maybe another one-point view and adding more of this kind of detail to it and then doing some little subtle changes here and there to make this thing look like much more aircraft, F-35, 117 approach to it. So the little sawtooth in it to kind of give some character and personality. And then, of course, from here, we'll look at this overall plan form, and the other side of it too would be the other aspect of this view would be to kind of get into the delivery paint scheme systems. How do you treat this thing? You know, the more I look at this, and I think I'd appreciate your input, those of you who are viewing in now or maybe a little bit later, what your opinion would be. For example, I see this shape as not looking for a lot of decoration. Maybe it's all decal like an aircraft piece. Maybe it has our Doug's logo on it or a logo on it of some sort, a number variation of theme, but not a lot of color break because there's so many surfaces. I could see maybe down to 2 colors. Maybe this is like a tone, like a flat gray. Then this might be a silver or a bright, or I don't use color so much, but maybe, no, that might be, maybe it's monochrome where it's a deeper charcoal, almost carbon fiber look, and then maybe a lighter gray up on top. Just a nice variation on break. Almost like what the Rolls-Royce and Bentley are doing with the two-tone pieces, paint schemes, where they're just real subtle, but they're nice and elegant looking, and they're slippery. There's not a lot of busyness to it. I don't think that's going to, these surfaces are not going to lose a lot of color. I prefer to see it go very subtle, maybe 1 color or maybe 2 at best, real close coupled together, very close in harmony, and a lot of good decal work to kind of, not a lot of decal, but very crisp detail work. Maybe it's just a logo piece, number variation, maybe Doug's name on the body side as a pilot and so forth. Just neat little things like that. So there's the overall, that was the first 3D printed piece. And there she is in elevation with some livery. I think you can see from my point of view here about, look at how the livery is working. Yeah, this works, but I think if we slow it down, for example, silver to black to yellow, the 3 colors, I don't know if that really does a job or not. So that'll be out for jury, I'm sure, to see what you all think in terms of as well. But the basic stance and the character, I think, is there. And again, not to be redundant, but to be redundant, I think that this form is should be one color. Maybe this whole lower appendage after in the body section, from that point on down, all 1 color. Maybe it's like a flat pneumatic gray, aircraft gray. Then the upper piece, which would be in white here, is maybe a real, like a subtle, even a silver, something that's really that shocking. That's a good point too. Maybe we go back to look at the silver arrow generation of the 50s that Mercedes-Benz had. It's a very interesting, all 1 color. Nice red graphics on it, and that was it. So that, again, there she is. There's an elevation, almost a very tight front 3/4. Then there's a little bit of perspective study, what it might look like from the other view. And just some really, I mean, some very dramatic looking, very directive looking surface work here, which I thought was, again, a great result of going back and forth with sketch variation. Let's try this, let's try that. It's never really an end unto itself, but the more you begin to refine this thing, the stronger it got. And I thought that was really interesting too. At this stage of the game, looking at what Doug sent recently, this whole family of forms, I'm inclined to think that this canard thing up front in the plan view, instead of being parallel to the nose itself, maybe we pull those guys back on an angle to give that same kind of angled slope to it, to give some character to it. I'll have to check with Doug to see if that's even possible at this stage of the game. Where was I here? I'll show you in a moment. I think they're coming down the line here. So we have this, and here's the rear 3/4. Very dramatic looking shape. I mean, look at that, how they just waterfalls into this canopy into body form into side pod. And these very long, extremely thin canards coming up the rear deck of this thing. I think it really has a real strong character to it. Very pleased with the fact that what we started with from pencil sketch to the actual finished 3D printed piece, and some of the graphics and livery on top of it. Again, notice little details like getting some lighting and the like. Maybe we take that lighting and put it in the long strips here. But those little details are yet to come. The main thing is, from where we started, where we are now, is an incredible journey. And again, I want to really pay respects to Doug Ridley. He did some great work on transferring my sketches and making modifications to make them work, and actually made them better in many cases. So thanks to his expertise and what he is able to do, this is really a neat process, and we're ready to launch. So notice, I'll come back to this. This is his website, fullerearthworkshop.com. Before I wrap the program up today, we'll make sure we bring it back up to speed. So he took the last shot at it here, a little bit of like a romance, like a glamour shot on a roadway. And I think he's seeing this view, where maybe these front canards should go the other way, actually bring them back into the actual form itself. And I don't know if that'll interrupt with the turning radius. That's maybe why he did that. But if we can kind of pull that angle back just a little bit, so it's not so almost like reverse sweep. Now, visually, this looks like it comes forward a little bit more, and we need to bring those forms back a little bit, bring them rearward. But that's yet to be done. I think that's just really cool stuff. So that's where we are with this thing here, and I'm going to leave that up for a moment. But I thought we'd wrap up the program, but I've laid out a couple of really quick pencil sketches. We're going to use this format here to give it some livery stuff here. So I'm going to take this basic shape and just put more beef into the sketch itself. Let's kind of look at these guys here. Just kind of bring these in. Get this down. Let's see what happens here. Real loose. And there's a secondary brake here. Ends up on the platform. There's a little chamfer brake we talked about. This now would be cockpit in this area here. So let's kind of tone that in. Then we have a base splitter. Run that through. Side pod. Form itself. Side pod coming up at that transition point there into that brake. Into that brake. Into that. And then that last little piece right there, bring it up back up. There's all the fastening we work with right there. On the base, this little winglet on the body side or base, into it, back up to the tail graphics. This all gets knocked out of here. There we are. Come back in, canard, extend it, hit the brake, bring it back. And again, telemetry piece, antenna systems, little details we might want to add later on, put some character to it. Some sawtoothing along the baseline here, same process. There's some stealth work. Let that fly right into that piece itself. Then there's some self-braking here. And again, so this back, there we are. An idea of what we want to do with the livery in this thing. Now, we want to keep this all upper piece. Again, I keep going back to that very simple color combination. Not a lot of work to deal with there, but I really that elevation stance really looks good. I mean, the proportions of the canopy's full forward. Has a lot of stance to it. It's very light looking. It's very angular looking. And it's very evil looking. So that's cool. And back in here, there it is there. And I don't mean evil in the sense in the satanic sense, but evil from a very presence. It looks like it really is intimidating. So that's what we're after. Wheels in place. Some hydro cover over this thing. Let's bring this in. A little bit more depth in this thing on the wheels. Same process here. Very simple application of surface work. There's an elevation. We're going to push that, add a little bit of a front canard here. Maybe that wing sits up on top of the surface. If there's time to change those little details like that, I think we'd be well suited to do so. So that's one variation to look at it here. I'm just going to go back and look at the second. Let me sharpen this stick here for a moment. Let's start again. Nope. That's better. I'll come back in and get a little more of this. One more pass out of here. And I'm going to use these elevations, for example, or sketches like this. Start putting some color graphics together. So with your permission, in about a week or so, maybe next week, we'll give you another variation and update on some of the color paint schemes and some of the things we're dealing with for detail work on the actual finished form itself. A lot of work in this guy. I want to give it its just due. On the ground canard. The image, there it is. Get the image back in place here. I'm just going to turn this, put a little bit of shadow in that overhang here in the intake. Again, it's cockpit, it's the canopy in place here. What happens if we put a little bit of tone in the main body portion here, and let that become maybe like a flat gray of some sort, just to kind of break it. That'd be cool too. Look how very simple that would be. Just a nice, simple one color pass to get this thing to really read well. And I think that would be an excellent way to look at this thing from the point of view of finishing it all up and making sure the statement is made. Let's go back in here for a moment. There we are. Ground line, backside wheel, tire. Oh, so we are back at it. There we are right there. And a little bit of color added here. Let's just do this. A little bit of detail work here. Maybe it's just that, just some color accent through the whole thing, whether it's red, yellow, silver, matters not. But just again, the key is to keep it simple. Due to the forms we're working with here, it's kind of darken this up just a bit, more gaudy to it. Not as vaporous. And maybe it's enough of an indication here as this. Just enough detail to give you some definition in that thing, and you've got it. So interesting set of circumstances here with this whole process. And then last but not least, let's try something else here. A bit more form to it, give it some substance to it. Tone down below, there it is. Kind of blend this in. See what that begins to look like here. We'll just get rid of this in a moment. Just kind of give it a little more character to it. So a little bit of gray back in through here. Sponge that up just a little bit. Again, just enough. Look on that surface. The more you simplify the shape, the more powerful it becomes. So I think that's the task we're going to be really headed with, or really kind of put a forte together. Let me move this over just a bit. In the end game here, we really kind of get this thing to work. Very interesting set of circumstances. Cool stuff to work with. Very interesting process, and believe me, from start to finish, this has been a really great journey about interchange in terms of concepts and ideas. And when you work with somebody as talented as Doug is, believe me, it's just so much more fluid. He makes some great suggestions. He has terrific ideas about, let's try this, and we're going to change. We have to change this to get to that. I fully understand that whole process, and he does. And I think from where we started, for example, I'm going to go back to where we started. Just from those pencil roughs right there, as to where we are now. But huge change. Now, initially, yeah, some of these character sketches are still congruent enough to make it work, but we kept refining it, and we kept looking at it from the point of view of being extremely intimidating overall. But I think the thing that I most respect about working with Doug is we never lost sight of that stealth look. And again, I started the stream by making a comment about the fact that everything out there was so common, you know, the very round IndyCar stuff, and yeah, it was nice, but it just didn't have a departure to it. So I just felt like, Doug, if we go that route, if we go aircraft-like, stealth-like, And that kind of character, you're going to gather a real audience. And I brought that up for this reason. Since this has been done, he just sent these full Earth images workshops studies to me last night after he wrapped up some of the final design theme pieces. He sent it out to his distributorship for people who are interested in the slot car process he's been working with. And lo and behold, he has been flooded with, where can I get this? This is exciting. So we had the right premise, and Doug had the right vision. I think it's just interesting that all of a sudden when he put out there, he put a little promo video together about the actual, I think he referred to it as the most innovative IndyCar program in 50 years, which I get. And from his point of view, he knows his business, so I think that might be pretty accurate. But I think what's neat about that was the fact that the response he got was just overwhelming. So I'm delighted for him. I think it's going to be great that we have something to deal with, something to work off of. We're going to do, as I said earlier in the beginning of the stream, we're going to develop a family of forums here. This is round number 1. We'll go to variation 2, variation 3, and we're going to do closed wheel IMSA, GTO type systems, and the closed wheel materials. Grand Prix prototypes, all that's going to come from the slot family. I think it's going to be nice to come out of a full Earth workshop under their umbrella with this whole new racing motorsports characterization. Even talk about getting into some like Mad Max trucks and doing some off-road stuff that's unique, because everything else out there is, again, it's product related, and it's present marketplace material, but there's not an advanced program out there for future think. And I think there's a gap out there that we've discovered, that people are looking for things like this. So very interesting how it all came together. So that's where we are today, gang, and I'm going to thank you for your patience with it here. As I said, the response we've gotten from the public, he sent the information down to some of the distributors he knows, and the first thing he got was, where can I get this? When are you going to have it ready? Boy, I'm looking forward to seeing it come on board. So now I'm in the process now, between now and the rest of the week, I think I'll be working with Doug on doing some graphics and selling some cards for some of the packaging pieces. So we're getting it all ready to go globally with it, hopefully, and we'll find out how we're going to take it apart. But I just want to, how far we can take this thing. And another thing I want to just close with here, please do me, if you would, if you have the time to do so, please visit fullearthworkshops.com. That's where you can find the information here and go through the orders, or maybe pick up some things you want to look at from Doug's perspective, what he's been working on. Again, fullearthworkshops.com. My work will be there with Doug's. So we're working in harmony with this whole process. And again, as I said in the beginning of the stream, this is a distinct honor for me to work with him. I've known him for years, tremendous talent. Really gets the job done. He's good, he's quick, he's agile, extremely, he loves to make changes on the fly, and he's not shy away from challenges. Sounds like somebody I know, and I could not be happier for him. And we're looking forward to some bigger and better things as this thing begins to progress. But remember this again, I'll say this for, I don't be redundant, but I want to make sure we get this point across. This is the beginning of an adventure here. This is this is the first product of many coming from Full Earth Workshops. And once again, please visit Doug's site at fullearthworkshop.com. Workshop.com, and you've got it. So once again, gang, thanks so much for your time today. Terrific program. We've made a lot of progress, and we've come from a long way from the pencil sketches to the variations on theme, going to get more stealth-like, keeping the personality in order, and delivering the goods that Doug wanted to see. And I'm delighted, as I said. I might go ahead, if we make more progress in between now and next week, I might come right back with another presentation on here's the final graphics and some of the color work we're doing, and get your feedback on it. So once again, can't thank you enough for the time spent today. You've been terrific, for your patience. Have any comments or questions, please feel free to drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. Oh, I take that back. We're still working on our website, so we're almost close to launching a whole new look here, so be patient with us. It's going to be an extremely exciting look at the whole new format from the website. We're still going to be calling it Dr. Contrast and the Dream Labs. That won't change, but the format is completely much more visual, highly interactive, a lot of video work, a lot of commentary, a lot of shorts going to be added into it, like little simple video clips, and above all else, much more. I hope. Don't misunderstand what I'm about to say, and please don't take it out of context. The other website was really well done with a tremendous talent, but it never showed, it really didn't tell anybody what I did and what the breadth of things like architecture, interior space, product design, architectural design, logo development, vehicle design, space machines, almost all over the map that never really highlighted that. This new one does. And as you open up looked at a prototype about maybe, was it 2 weeks ago, as it was being developed, looked at the first blush at it, and the opening page is just drop dead sensational. There's a statement on it for me, and behind that statement is a running video of the work that I've been doing. It changes, and hopefully we'll have enough video work to kind of change the sequence from time to time every time you tune in. So it's much more dynamic, and I'm looking forward. Be patient with us. It's coming soon, and we should be very close to the next week or two to get this thing back up and running. Plus, we'll be able to add more product to it through Shopify. We've got posters, T-shirts, all that's coming. So thanks again for your patience, folks. And again, please feel free to drop me a note when I get my website back up. More than happy to do so and answer any questions you might have. If I can be of any assistance to you, more than happy to do so. So thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. And I always finish with this because I think it's the most important part of the whole process. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. All the best, gang. Take care and have a great one. We'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye.